Mom begs physicians to attend to her ill infant. She had a 65-year-old alcoholic-like liver, according to a scan 3 months later. In an exclusive interview with People, Lauren Sewell discusses her daughter Violet's life-altering 4S neuroblastoma diagnosis at the age of 3 months. I will explain everything. Never miss this video. Please subscribe to the channel. When Lauren and Joe Sewell heard what might be described as every parent's worst nightmare, the hospital room was packed. Some of the gastrointestinal specialists waiting were familiar to them, but behind them was a group of total strangers who had never seen the Sewell's 3-month-old child before. As they provided the long-awaited diagnosis, the solution to all the unsettling symptoms that have dogged baby Violet since her birth in mid-July, 2 of the current attending physicians bent down. When the physicians addressed the Sewells, they were direct. "We want to introduce you to our oncology team, even though I know we admitted daughter for liver problems." In October, the physicians informed Lauren, 34, and Joe, 37, that their daughter had cancer. The mother of 4 says to People that she never could have foreseen how she would respond to the news. Neither a tearful breakdown nor a visceral cry occurred. This overwhelming sense of peace, as strange as that sounds, numbed Lauren's anxiety and fear. But at last, following extended ER stays, repeated hospital stays, MRIs, and ultrasounds, it seemed as though their prayers had been heard. "We knew something was wrong, and we just needed to figure out what to try to help her," Lauren explains. Although it took months to diagnose Violet with stage 4S neuroblastoma, her intuition was correct, and she began chemotherapy less than 48 hours after receiving a formal diagnosis. Lauren knew her 4th child wasn't doing well from the beginning. Like her older siblings, Willow, 9, Broderick, 4, and Shepard, 3, she weighed a healthy 10 pounds at birth. But that was about the extent of their similarities. Violet was never a typical infant. She frequently skipped meals, and her weight plateaued after only a few weeks of life. Their reaction was, "She looks fine, she looks fine." All I could say was, "But she's not. Don't assume she's not ill just because she's not a 6-pound, fragile infant." Joe and Lauren worked to compile a comprehensive list of all the potential causes of their daughter's difficulties. To account for any allergies, they modified her recipe. In order to determine whether her constant spitting was a sign of reflux, they kept an eye on it. She had a revision of her lip and tongue. Violet's condition was only momentarily improved by the most successful interventions. She would start crying and throwing up again in a matter of hours. Her pediatrician immediately sent the family 40 minutes out to Johns Hopkins Hospital to consult experts when she was 5 weeks old. There, they conducted an ultrasound, the results of which alarmed Lauren and Joe. But the doctors appeared far less worried. The team first scheduled an MRI for Violet after the ultrasound revealed 3 tumors on her liver. Following Violet's hospital admission, the physicians informed the Sewells that they wanted to keep her on fluids and wait a few days to confirm that an MRI was absolutely required. They thought it might be a virus. "What about those lesions?" Lauren asked. Everyone appeared worried. It was obvious that the doctor's opinion on Violet's liver spots had changed. Although she claims the specialists dismissed her concerns and clarified that the spots were hemangiomas, common, benign growths made by extra blood vessels, her mother wasn't persuaded. She was cautious, but she could appreciate their hesitation to perform an MRI on young Violet without first putting her through less invasive procedures. But, according to Lauren, the baby hit every worst-case scenario in a matter of days, and Violet had to spend 2 weeks at Johns Hopkins. In order to feed Violet through her nasal canal temporarily, and then we'll wean her back to feeding normally. Lauren remembers the physician's plan after 3 days of ineffective fluid administration. It took the specialists 3 days to conclude that they needed to change to large bolus feeds every 3 hours. Over the next 3 days, they had to adjust to Violet needing to be fed continuously for 24 hours, even though they hadn't anticipated this demand. She could not tolerate the 30, 60 or 90-minute bolus feeds every 3 hours without vomiting profusely, Lauren explains. She sobbed as she pleaded with the physicians for assistance, expressing her strong belief that Violet's issue went beyond the severe reflux that they insisted was the reason. Joe and Lauren repeatedly brought up Violet's liver lesions over the 2-week series of worst-case scenarios, but they were unable to stop them. There was no necessity for the gastrointestinal team to do an MRI. Even doing a repeat ultrasound at that point, we would have seen more lesions, Lauren says. However, Violet changed her mind at the end of that 2-week period of worst-case scenarios. She began to tolerate her constant feedings. At 7 weeks old, she was released in early September and sent home with her parents and a home nurse. Maybe they're correct, we thought. We just have to give her time, Lauren tells People. Perhaps it's severe reflux because she'll grow and get bigger, and her esophagus will get longer. Maybe that's just how she is right now. It was not until early October that they were able to follow up with Violet's gastrointestinal physician. Lauren had already observed her daughter's condition gradually deteriorating back to poor feedings, restless nights, and loud, inexplicable crying by that time. They resumed ticking boxes under the guidance of the GI specialist. So we took all necessary action. We changed her formula and doubled her reflux medication, Lauren explains. Her daughter completely stopped accepting feeding on October 19th. Anytime we would turn on her feeding pump, she would immediately vomit. The on-call physician again suggested that it was a gastrointestinal virus. Mom was advised to wait a few days, try Pedialyte, give Violet some gut rest, and reassess the matter on Monday after she resisted. She was experiencing periods of respite, but the baby wasn't entirely okay. Lauren had witnessed Violet's previous recovery. You get in your head a little bit. Am I exaggerating how bad this is, or am I the only one that truly sees this? She admits to People. At the end of the weekend, Lauren was alarmed to see her worries were warranted. Violet's stomach was distended, rock hard on the top and soft on the bottom. Their home nurse rushed over and immediately knew they needed to get back to Hopkins. They repeated the ultrasound, they repeated blood work, and we were in the ER all night, says Lauren. When the GI attending arrived the next morning, Lauren told him everything she'd observed of Violet's condition, like her sensitivity to volume. The child couldn't even tolerate 2 milliliters of medication. Something was wrong. Even though the doctor hadn't yet seen Violet's ultrasound results, he didn't wait to brush off the anxious mother's worries. Even though the doctor hadn't yet seen Violet's ultrasound results, he didn't wait to brush off the anxious mother's worries. You won't like to hear this, but that might just be her nature, he remarked. More than 3 months later, Lauren recalls. I looked at him and I said, with all due respect, you are wrong, and I'm not leaving until you do the MRI. She noticed his attitude change when he saw Violet's scans and requested him to check on the ultrasound results. Lauren remarks, it appeared as though he had seen a ghost. He just said, I'm going to talk to some people and I think we're going to do the ultrasound, or I think we're going to do the MRI, and he left. Violet and Lauren were instructed to wait in the emergency room until a room on the same level where they had been admitted in September became available. Lauren gushed to her daughter, Violet, we're going to go see our nurse friends up on the 9th floor, when a nurse eventually arrived to lead them up. She recalls the nurse interrupting her to inform her that they would not be going to the 9th floor. They were now going to the 11th floor, in spite of what Lauren had been informed. What happens there? She inquired. The nurse replied, it's the oncology floor, and then to Lauren's evident surprise, she added, but don't freak out. It's all right. In order to prevent herself from losing her composure, the mother called her husband. The GI doctor came in to explain that Violet wasn't going to be admitted for feeding concerns again. Her liver, which had doubled in size in just 5 weeks, required treatment this time. Although the cause of its enlargement was unknown, they were aware that Violet was in danger of developing liver failure. According to one of her physicians, he had never observed such a thing in a child. When have you seen this on an ultrasound before? I asked him. Lauren tells People that he responded with 65-year-old drinkers. At that point, I'm having a panic attack because I'm thinking she's going to need a liver transplant. While they waited for Violet's MRI results, she and Joe were in a tense hold. Before the physicians could gently break the news of the scans, the report filled Lauren's email. Naturally, I'm going to look at it because I've been waiting 3 months, she says. When I opened it, the words suspected neuroblastoma, countless tumors covering liver, mass discovered on adrenal gland, were written at the very top of the report. That's how we learned about it. Lauren thinks that a certain amount of shock likely preceded her response, or her sudden calm. She did, however, get emotional when talking about how they would handle Violet's pain levels moving ahead. Details. I don't think we realized how much pain she was in, says Lauren. She was on a morphine pump of constant morphine when she was 3 months old, and she had that for a month, 6 weeks. Although they could only examine Violet's liver, a biopsy performed early the next day validated their findings. Because the organ was so large, the doctors were unable to access her adrenal gland, which is where the cancer was discovered to have started. Fortunately, it was still isolated in her liver when her physicians discovered it, but it had already begun to spread. Her oncologist said he would bet a lot of money that she had it in utero, just with how drastic and how fast everything happened, Lauren recalls. That's why when she was born, she was in pain and then it was just spreading to her liver. When these malignancies are discovered during a mother's pregnancy, the newborn may immediately begin chemotherapy. Violet does not have this condition, but according to Lauren, for S neuroblastoma, the for S designation refers to individuals who are 12 months or younger, is usually quite treatable. Chemotherapy is not even necessary for many diagnosed infants. Under the age of 1, sometimes their body will kick in a natural immune system response and fight the cancer on its own with nothing, Lauren continues. That was not done by Violet's body. There was hope that it might finally kick in, but for some reason, it isn't working for her. Furthermore, research indicates that 4S neuroblastoma with liver enlargement has a grim prognosis, according to Lauren. However, there is optimism because Violet's lead oncologist informed Lauren about a 4-year-old girl who only required 4 rounds of chemotherapy on the day of Violet's diagnosis. She now only visits the doctor for semi-annual examinations. She had the same thing Violet did, and she's doing great, the mother from Maryland said. So there are children that do have the liver enlargement that go on and they don't relapse and they live a pretty normal life. In addition to receiving a mild dose of chemotherapy over 3 days, Violet must wait 2.5 weeks for the cycle to be deemed finished. She will undergo 2 rounds of chemotherapy over a period of 6 weeks because her treatments are done in sets. In order to assess the effectiveness of the treatment, her doctors will then perform a follow-up MRI to examine the egg-like tumors on her liver. The doctors weren't quite happy with the development at first. Only about 10% of the 5 tumors shrank, and greater shrinkage was required to prevent more feeding problems. We repeated, ended cycles 3 and 4 and then did another MRI in the beginning of January, and that had a more drastic decrease, Lauren says, adding that her daughter still struggles to eat and maintain her weight due to a particularly large tumor that clogs Violet's stomach. Violet's next MRI is set for February 27th, and her 6th round of chemotherapy began on February 11th. They're almost at the limit for this particular malignancy, but they'll reassess as normal to see if she needs another round of cycles. Based on her MRI scans, they will have to determine whether to move forward with chemotherapy or wait a few months, as 4S neuroblastoma can only receive 8 cycles of treatment. Talking to her oncologist, there's a very high probability that she's going to need the full 8, but we're just praying that maybe miraculously these tumors shrink, says Lauren. That the larger tumor just shrinks very, very drastically, so we can just monitor her after that, and she doesn't have to do the next 2 cycles. Violet spent 9 weeks in the hospital after her official diagnosis in October, and during that time her parents ran into many doctors and nurses who previously tended to the child. When Lauren told them why she was back, she says they remembered her unrelenting intuition. I told them, I'm just pleading with you, if you ever have a child come in, even if you think it's reflux or a virus, do everything you can to make sure that's what it is. Lauren adds, and if a parent tells you something is wrong, trust them until you've shown them wrong. A lot of them say, we will remember her case for the rest of our life. Even though Lauren is proud to have advocated for Violet's careful medical attention, she acknowledges that she does occasionally feel sad. She's my last child, and I haven't had the opportunity to fully enjoy her company. From the moment of her birth, she has been in survival mode, always in fight or flight mode. However, you are not allowed to sit there. She needs me, therefore it's impossible to stay there, Lauren adds. Fortunately, she has been able to rely on her church community, family, and friends. Additionally, thousands more individuals began supporting the Sewells worldwide as she turned to her loved ones for assistance. When Violet was diagnosed, Lauren wasn't sure how to break the news to everyone. One of her nurses advised Lauren to post a blast on social media since it was too much to bear and too much to share. The mother already maintained a moderate internet presence, sharing family and leisure photos, but she had slowed her pace throughout Violet's pregnancy. She was reluctant to record the pregnancy because of her previous infertility issues, and she intended to make a surprise birth announcement when the time came. Lauren refrained from uploading anything as Violet was sick from the beginning. Life had changed significantly since her last Instagram post by the time they received a diagnosis, but Lauren concurred with the nurse. Her social media accounts were already followed by everyone who needed to know about the issue. Caitlin Sewell, Lauren's sister-in-law, also started a GoFundMe page to help the family while Violet was receiving treatment. According to Lauren, the Instagram reel she shared on October 28th has had 3.6 million views. "I never expected the first video to blow up the way that it did, and just all of these messages and people rallying behind us," she adds. "We were overwhelmed with gratitude." Lauren was supposed to be in New Orleans with her mother, cousin, and daughter Willow, age 9, at the time she shared that now-famous update. It was intended that the four of them would attend Taylor Swift's renowned Eras tour. As a surprise birthday present for Willow, the Super Swiftie, Lauren purchased the tickets a year prior. For the entire family, it was going to be a full-circle occasion. "My cousin, we're the same age, and we grew up going to Taylor Swift concerts," Lauren goes on. "My mom surprised me my freshman year of college, going to her very first solo tour. At Swift's concerts, Lauren and her cousin Callan have created incredible experiences. After they went wedding dress shopping together and discovered the ideal gown for Lauren's marriage to Joe, they went to the Fearless tour." In her own words, Swift has always been kind of intertwined into things. The long-standing friendship and fandom between Lauren and Callan, as well as a new generation of mothers surprise their daughters, would all come together during the Eras tour. However, Violet received a cancer diagnosis 2 days prior to their scheduled departure for Louisiana. "I was aware that I couldn't go. I couldn't board a plane and leave because she wasn't stable enough," Lauren adds. Fortunately, her mother and cousin managed to make it the best weekend for Willow despite her insistence that her family continue on without her. The personnel on the Maryland oncology floor understood what Lauren was missing out on and tried to find a solution to lessen the pain of her sacrifice. One of the nurses used an Eras tour motif to adorn their hospital door, however she did it in Violet's version rather than Swift's usual one. Lauren has over 42,700 followers on Instagram, and that one gesture turned into a full-fledged movement. She alludes to Violet's battle with cancer as Fearless Violet's version, a reference to Swift's 2021 re-recording of her second studio CD. The singer's presence also remains throughout Violet's hospital stays. It's become a tradition for the nurses to bring in Swift-inspired decor and sing for each round of the baby's chemotherapy. They'll take song titles or lyrics and twist them to include Violet. During one of her MRIs, Lauren found a website that lets users insert photos into the Eras tour poster format. She added pictures of Violet and printed the custom image on t-shirts. On the back, the merchandise reads, "Fearless Violet's version." "So that's been kind of her theme as she's fighting cancer," says Lauren, noting how she's seen her social media followers enjoy the concept. "Even though it's something that's heavy with a baby having cancer, it's just kind of spun a little light to it." Even while sharing Violet's story so extensively was intimidating at first, Lauren has discovered that Instagram is a very comforting site for mothers. She's heard from people who had 4S neuroblastoma as infants, as well as from a number of other parents whose children have the disease. Success tales from those on the other side of the illness are all over her inbox. When the days get really hard, or she's backtracking and things aren't going as well, and we feel like we're not making that much progress, seeing those stories, it's given us hope, Lauren adds. When Lauren took Violet in for an appointment at Johns Hopkins a few weeks ago, she encountered a very significant kind of hope. The elder sister spent the entire checkup playing in a waiting area since Willow wanted to accompany them. Lauren came out to see how her oldest child was doing, holding Violet in her arms, and she also saw young girls standing there. Her mother appeared to be observing Lauren nearby, and they started talking. According to the woman, her 4-year-old kid is named Scarlett. She asked, "Do you mind me asking what your daughter has?" after giving me a quick glance. Lauren tells people, and she just had this smile when I told her. However, it was merely a reassuring smile. She said. Scarlett possessed that. Lauren quickly put the pieces together after discovering that Violet and Scarlett had the same oncologist. On the day Violet was diagnosed, the doctor brought up this girl. As the oncologist had predicted, she was growing up in good health. It was completely just coincidence and fate that we ran into them, Lauren says. According to Violet's doctor, he saw that she had met Scarlett and her mother. Although he was unable to verify it, Lauren was comforted by his smile when she inquired whether that was the person he had named in October. Rather, contemporary technology reinforced Lauren's pre-existing knowledge. Scarlett's mother immediately responded to her after finding her on Instagram. She claimed that Violet and Lauren were constantly on her mind. They began sending each other notes that lift the Sewell's spirits even on their darkest days. "You're going to get there," she remarked. Lauren relates her conversations with the other mother, saying, "It may be slow, but you're going to get there. It was just really, really neat to have that."